Democrat Party, it's all 9 months. There's
That's
no,
right.
I mean, and anyone who says, oh, that's not true, it's a matter of law. Look at what they just passed in Colorado. All 9 months. No restriction whatsoever for any reason whatsoever.
They didn't vote on Roe v. Wade being codified as law. They voted in the Senate on the idea of abortion being permissible up to the 9th month. So I think, and I know it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, but we got to have it, Clay, right? The Republicans have got to have it. They got to go on offense here. They got to say, look, I'm sorry, folks, the Democrat Party's in favor of murder. Full stop. They're in favor of legalized murder. That is the reality, scientific, moral, and ethical that we face right now. We do have a big election coming up here, obviously. Midterms looming almost at Labor Day. So once everyone comes back from the Labor Day holiday, we know it's then just a sprint to the finish to see what the balance of power will be in, well, Congress, but also in a lot of other races all across the country, state and local races. There was some good news we didn't talk about earlier this week, but the in the Florida races, Clay, there were some DeSantis-backed school board members who did very well, which was interesting. I think we need to start thinking about how to get back to what caused that moment of panic for Democrats in the off-year election that occurred where Glenn Youngkin became the governor of Virginia, where they almost lost the governor's mansion in New Jersey. People forget this.
Yes.
Democrats came shockingly close to losing to a Republican in the state of New Jersey. Schools and who's in charge of educating your children, what they're doing to your kids, not just with COVID, but with the indoctrination and the trans agenda. That was all so important. I think there's been a little bit of people have lost this focus a little bit, and we're trying to make the message stick right now. Yeah, inflation, okay, but the problem with inflation, Clay, is I think that people start to they almost price it into their thinking. You know, when it starts ramping up, everyone goes, oh my gosh. But then their motivation from inflation to vote out the party that caused it might not be quite as high. And it's all about timing. Van Jones, who, as I've said before here, is an astute Democrat. He understands where the Democrat Party is. He's starting to sound like he thinks things are looking really good for Team Democrat. I want to address this with you, Clay.
It feels good. We had this sort of season of shame where Democrats were just so disappointed and frustrated with what's going on in D.C., dismayed by the Republicans. We've gone from disappointed to determined now because Biden is winning. And also you now see people feeling like, look, the Republicans have been doing terrible stuff when it comes to January 6th, inexcusable. And women are standing up across the country. So I think right now with the economy being terrible, you expect Republicans to be just crushing us everywhere, and they're not.
So he's right about they're not based on the polls right now. But, of course, all that matters is Election Day and the actual scoreboard when we see this go down. I do think that Republicans need to go on offense more and also speak more about what the agenda is. And that brings me to schools. It brings me to the economy. There are a number of areas where it's not just enough to say Biden is a senile buffoon because, yes, we know, but obviously that's not pushing the numbers enough right now in the right direction. There's got to be a redoubling of the effort.
Yeah, and look, so this is going to be controversial to some people, but I think that Dobbs is having an impact for Democrats. And there's a good editorial in the Wall Street Journal talking about this. There's a Republicans are like the dog that caught the car. For so long, the talking point was we've got to overturn Roe v. Wade. We've got to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I think a lot of people don't understand now what has happened now that Roe v. Wade's been overturned. And I want to play this audio because it ties in with something that happened in New York, Buck, where basically we had a congressional election and it was almost entirely decided in New York where nothing is changing, right? If anything, abortions are even more available going forward in New York. But Pat Ryan won New York 19, which was a Biden plus 1.5 district that Republicans felt really good about flipping by entirely arguing about abortion. That was basically his entire campaign. And he won 51-49, basically, Listen to Cut 20. I want you all out there, a lot of people who work in politics, listen to this. I think this is going to become the primary talking point, I really do, of Democrats to try to distract from inflation, the border, the murder rate, all the disasters. Listen to Cut 20, Buck, that was effective in a toss-up district in New York.
We won because this was a referendum on freedom. The abortion issue and the attack on women's reproductive rights is representative of this broader multi-front thrust by increasingly extreme Republican Party to rip away fundamental rights and freedoms. And when that happens in our country, Americans of all parties stand up like we saw in Kansas and we saw last night here in New York. And I think that momentum is certainly going to build and carry forward.
Well, I got to say, the outcome here in New York is not what you're going to see. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the primary issue the same way, even assuming his analysis here is correct, Clay. Georgia Senate race is not going to be determined based upon abortion. The Pennsylvania Senate race is not going to be determined based on abortion. It's also fascinating to hear somebody in New York, where, as you pointed out, there's really no change in the status, talk about an assault on freedom. This is a Supreme Court decision. It's not the Republican Party didn't just pass a law. The Supreme Court said your make-believe constitutional right goes away. Now, at the state level, you get to determine what it is that abortion actually means as a legal matter, where it will be legal, what stages it will be legal. I think Democrats very much want to believe this. I think the Democrat base wants to believe this. As we get closer to the election, so they will come out for sure. So there's going to be
that's the argument they're going to make.
There's going to be Democrat base turnout boost from this, but I don't think that if you look at the polling for independents in the and persuadables in the key states that are up right now, I don't think it's going to be the deciding factor or even close to the deciding factor.
I hope that's right, because I've always felt like the single issue vote on abortion to me has never been something where I think you should make every decision based on that, right? My personal opinion. This year should be a referendum on COVID. It should be a referendum on Biden's incompetence, basically everywhere. But what you just heard, I think, is important. And I think that Republicans have to figure out what the message is going to be, because a lot of people are confused. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty in the wake of this decision. And so my argument would be, look, most Republicans should focus on 9-month abortions. And that's what Blake Masters is doing right now. You sent me the video, like kind of trying to lay it out, because the extreme position to me, the vast majority of Americans believe that third-term abortions should not be legal. And they simultaneously believe, and again, I understand this is a complex issue and a lot of people have a variety of opinions, that rape, incest, all of those should be exceptions, right? And that there should be a line somewhere in the first trimester where this occurs, right? Now, I understand this is a complex issue, but really there's like 10% of people who say there should be no abortions allowed at all. And there's about 10% of people that say abortion should be legal all the way basically up to birth and even beyond. The
difference is the Democrat Party's official platform is what you just laid out. That is the official Democrat line. There's no
that is
in the Republican Party you can have people who say here's where I draw the line, here's what I think are exceptions or no exceptions. There's actually variability among the GOP. I mean, true conservatives or rather the conservative base is pro-life, so they're overwhelmingly going to be in favor of no abortion or the absolute bare minimum restrictions on abortion. Democrat Party, it's all 9 months. There's no, right. I mean, and anyone who says, oh, that's not true, it's a matter of law. Look at what they just passed in Colorado. All 9 months. No restriction whatsoever for any reason whatsoever.
They didn't vote on Roe v. Wade being codified as law. They voted in the Senate on the idea of abortion being permissible up to the 9th month. So I think, and I know it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, but we got to have it, Clay, right? The Republicans have got to have it. They got to go on offense here. They got to say, look, I'm sorry, folks, the Democrat Party's in favor of murder. Full stop. They're in favor of legalized murder. That is the reality, scientific, moral, and ethical that we face right now. Instead of, I don't know what the opponent was saying in this New York 19th district, but, a lot of inflation. Yeah, okay, we know about the inflation, but the other problem is, Clay, that a lot of the inflation was spent under Trump. I hate to be the one that points this out, but they are actually making that case too. $6 trillion.
Yeah. Well, look, and I think your point on inflation is well taken. At some point, it just sets in, and it's the reality. And I do think that the price of gas coming down has, to some people, when you were paying $5 and now you're paying whatever it is, $3.75 a gallon, like it's still super high, but it's not as high as it was, and it's continued to come back down. And so in your head, as you are spending, the number one place where people notice inflation, Buck, is the gas tank, right? When you're filling up and it's over $100, and every time you drive by a gas station, the price goes up, everybody notices it, even though inflation is still at 40-year highs. Psychologically, the fact that gas prices has come back, I think, has worked in Biden's favor. But I think that abortion angle, that's going to be the attack. And for everybody out there who's listening to us right now and is working on a congressional campaign or working on a Senate campaign or working on a governor's campaign, you need to drill down with your candidate and figure out what your position is and make it. And I think, Buck, yours, which is one we've argued here, is the Democrat position on abortion used to be safe, legal, and rare. Like in the 90s, that's what they would argue. That's what Joe Biden argued for much of his career. Now it's you should be able to have an abortion in the 9th month of pregnancy and even be proud of
the
it.
Democrat Party
the Democrats
is,
out
the
there
Democrat
like,
Party
I'm so
is openly, and I mean they should say this. It is true. They are openly pro-infanticide. That is the reality of the Democrat Party today. It's a harsh thing for people to hear. It is true. Otherwise, explain the Colorado law. They won't explain it. Notice the way this guy, Pat Ryan, who just got elected in New York, said this was a referendum on freedom. Oh, really? It's a referendum on freedom? The freedom to do what exactly? They never speak honestly about the issue because they know the more people understand it, the more revolted by the official Democrat Party position they are. Again, I don't think that in the key races that are going to determine control of the House and the Senate, abortion is going to be even a top 5 issue. I could be wrong.
I hope you're right. I'm trying to figure out.
Suburban wine moms get very upset about. Suburban non-moms who drink wine get very upset about this. College-educated white females in particular, as a demographic, are really upset about this. But for a lot of other folks, man, there's just more important stuff.
Well, what I see, Buck, is there are a lot of persuadable moms out there. I'm surrounded by moms, all right? So where I live, I'm in the wheelhouse of suburban. And so many of those moms are still furious over COVID. They're furious that their kids were taken out of school. They're furious that their kids had to wear masks. And they were all, many of them who maybe traditionally would have never considered themselves to even consider voting Republican, they were all aggressively coming over. And the way that Democrats are trying to persuade them not to. And you could say, okay, well, I don't really like the reason why Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia was moms. He nailed it with suburban moms. They abandoned the Democrat Party over schools, over masking, over COVID. And the way that Democrats are trying to pull them back is by saying, just so you know, if your 14-year-old gets pregnant, they're going to have a baby. And that is going to rattle some of those moms. So you have to talk about this in a rational way. You have to explain what Dobbs did because there's going to be so much inflammatory stuff out there. I just think people need to be prepared for what the Democrat playbook is going to be. I hope you're right, but my concern is there's a lot of women out there listening to us right now in Sandy Springs, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, making a decision about whether they're going to vote for Warnock or for Herschel Walker. I'm concerned about how that's going to play there. There's a lot of people listening to us right now, in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're massive in Phoenix. And they're trying to decide, are they going to vote for Blake Masters? A lot of moms. We appreciate all of you. Deciding, are they going to vote for Blake Masters or are they going to vote for the astronaut guy, Mark Kelly? Blake Masters got a good argument up. These are the women, I think, that are going to decide the election because a lot of people are not persuadable. I think they are, and I think we have to do a better job of persuading them.
I don't think it'll be a top 5 issue. I don't think. I think your read on this one is off.
Issue.
Unfortunately,
it is a top 5 issue for those women. I think it's the number 1 issue, and those are the persuadable base, in my opinion.
I mean, I think white working class male voters are going to determine the elections in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, maybe a little less so. But suburban women also, I think, will probably vote very much based on the candidate, right? So this is where it gets into the, okay, well, how does he talk about a whole range of issues, and how does he make
have
them
kids?
feel?
Is he likable? Does he smile?
I understand all that. You talk about Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin, very tall, pretty handsome. Wears dad vests. I'm just saying.
I'm just trying. The sex appeal of Glenn Youngkin is he's
got good hair, Clay.
Wildly,
Respect.
Yeah,